I'd like to call this informational meeting of Tuesday, July 5th, 2022 to order. Our first order of business, as we normally do, would be committee reports, but let me interject before we start. If there are tornado warnings and sirens that we hear here, we'll all go to the basement. Fair enough? Great. Committee reports, Metro Management Council. Commissioner Sale, or Sol. Let me start over. Metro Management Council. Council members Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Councilor Sale and I were able to meet. Our Metro Management Council meeting was last Wednesday, June 29th, and we voted on two different things. The first is that we voted on a 5.25% wage increase that will be adjusted in 2023. And the other thing that we voted on was, and we approved an employee incentive from the 2022 funds, and is approximately $2,500, and they dispersed $1,500 in May, and then they'll disperse another $1,000 in December of this year. And that was just adjusted due to the cost of living, and then they'll have the wage increase starting next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Council remarks at this time. Councilor McCarris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one quick comment. Last week I had the opportunity to attend the initial meeting of the Sioux Falls Urban Agricultural Coalition, a group that some of our city staff is involved in, a variety of other groups in the city. I think it's an important element, a lot of conversation around food deserts in Sioux Falls, and just a comment that I think as we move forward in the months ahead, it might be something to have at one of our informational meetings. I think many of us think of urban agriculture, we think of someone with 3 chickens in their backyard, but this coalition is much more than that. It's about establishing gardens that are, I think, going to produce some more substantive amount of food for whole neighborhoods, and any benefit to neighborhoods in those areas I think is really important. So just wanted to mention that I plan to attend those meetings moving forward, and to make everyone aware that I think the city staff's doing some good conversation and work on that front.
Thank you. Other council remarks? Seeing none, we'll jump into our first presentation, the Falls Park Visitor Center Management Agreement.
Good afternoon, Jackie Nelson, Parks and Recreation, here to talk to you today about the Falls Park Visitor Center Management Agreement. So a short presentation for you, but a quick overview because I know some of you are new. So the city has had a long-standing relationship with Experience Sioux Falls or the Chamber to run the Visitor Center at Falls Park. The previous agreement did expire this past December, on the 31st of December. And within that agreement, it ultimately outlines all the different management and operational features of the Visitor Center and who's going to do what, which we partner with Experience Sioux Falls to do so. When that agreement expired, we decided to go forward with a new 9-month agreement just because Experience Sioux Falls was looking at changing some legal status in regard to their name and breaking away from the chamber. So in that legal status change, we knew it was going to be about a 9-month period. Therefore, we just did a 9-month agreement this past December. So that 9-month agreement is now coming to an end on September 30th of this year. All of the legal ramifications have been finalized, and so we're ready to move forward now with our formal new agreement of 5 years again with Experience Sioux Falls. So this new agreement that we'll be bringing forward to you in August will be a 5-year agreement with Experience Sioux Falls. Everything else in regard to the agreement, all the other language, terms, would be similar to what has been in the past. So again, a 5-year term, but with Experience Sioux Falls now as the legal entity. So timeline informational today. With management agreements, we do need to bring forward information to you 7 days prior to us bringing it to you at a city council meeting. So that is why I'm here today. July 20th, we'll take it to Park Board for their recommendation and approval. City council meeting on August 2nd, and then this would make this new agreement actually effective on September 1st, which would be a few days, a month prior to when the other one actually terminates. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Council questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Well, now the annual ambulance report and rate increase has that time mark to beat.
Good evening, City Council. I'm Alicia Calera, the Chief of Clinical Health Services for the Health Department. Just wanted to mention that I had the opportunity to meet Councilor Cole and provide a tour for her through Falls Community Health, and certainly wanted to extend that invitation to Councilors McCurris and Branco as well. But tonight, we are here to talk about ambulance service, and though we'll speak mostly about PCEMS tonight, the EMS service is a system, and so I believe some of my colleagues will be stepping in. They're being delayed, I'm sure, by this storm, but certainly want to thank Captain Garden from PD for being here so far this evening. We are also expecting Matt McQuiston. He's the REMSA chair for our new council members. REMSA is the Regional Emergency Medical Services Authority that really is engaged in EMS quality oversight. Also, we may have someone here representing fire. As I mentioned, I think everyone's delayed by the storm. Each year, this council receives an annual ambulance service contract compliance report, which you would have received last week. And then we also discuss the annual rate increase for the annual ambulance service as well. For background, the City of Sioux Falls does have an exclusive ground transport contract with PCEMS. And that contract was first approved in February of 2015. It was renewed in December of 2018, and it goes through May of 2026. So my role here this evening is to just affirm that PCEMS is in contract compliance for this preceding year. So for instance, response time performance is required, and for each priority, they have met the requirements of the contract. For clinical performance, you will notice in the report that you receive that clinical measures have been documented, cardiac arrest outcomes, medical audits, and et cetera. These are all part of the clinical performance standards that are reviewed. System improvements, there's numerous innovative projects that PCEMS is bringing to improve the performance of our system. Workforce stability, of course, in healthcare, that's been challenging, but PCEMS has taken several steps to address employee retention, which I'm sure they will talk through. We also make sure that the pricing compliance has been maintained, and that is independently reviewed, and they have maintained their pricing compliance. And then finally, reporting compliance. All reporting requirements have been met. So in addition to the report, this information was presented to the REMSA board, who approved their compliance and approved the report as well at their June 22nd meeting. So in addition to this report, tonight will be the first reading for the annual ambulance rate increase for PCEMS. So the agreement between the City of Sioux Falls and Patient Care stipulates that ambulance services will be provided without city subsidy, and the primary means of compensation will be through fee-for-service reimbursement of patient charges. In turn, annual rate increases will be the greater of either 3% or the increase in the Consumer Pricing Index for any given year. All rates and charges shall be approved by the REMSA board and the City Council. So for this past year, ending May 2022, the Consumer Pricing Index was 8.6%. And therefore, the rate increase for your consideration is 8.6%. The council members, of course, who've been hearing this presentation for the last few years will recognize that this is higher than previous years. It's generally been 3%. Last year was the highest at 5%, and then this year is 8.6%. But again, the contract provides that the increase is either 3% or the CPI, whichever is greater. So this was also brought forward to the REMSA board at their June 22nd meeting and discussed and approved. So the REMSA board has approved this rate increase request. So I will bring that forward to you at tonight's first reading. But at this time, I will turn it over to Mark Postma. He's the president of PCEMS, and his team is going to be presenting the detailed contract compliance report.
Good evening. It was pretty dark out there when I came in. I'd like to, my name is Mark Postma, and I'm the president of Patient Care EMS. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about our company because there's a lot of new faces on the commission. And our company, we have about 2,000 employees nationwide. And we have our Sioux Falls operation is one of the 6 operations that we run nationwide. Do not live here. I live in Florida. However, I grew up in Harrisburg and was a paramedic here back in the 80s. Worked here as an EMT and a paramedic with Sioux Falls Ambulance. Obviously, I've been a paramedic myself and been in this business my entire life. These past 3 years have taken its toll on a lot of businesses. Ours has been really tough overall from a national perspective. I'm the former president of the American Ambulance Association. We've had a lot of paramedics paramedics leave this business to get into different things and really get out of healthcare. And we really struggled nationwide to be able to put paramedics in the seats. A couple of our operations that went to BLS 911 responses. But the good news is here in Sioux Falls, we have not had that type of turnover here, and we have not seen quite the effects that we have in some of our other operations. But the Sioux Falls operation, we came through COVID actually much better than everybody else did. We made sure we went out and bought supplies, which was very dicey to do back in the early days of COVID, to go out and purchase them at very high prices. All of our people, had PPE at all times throughout our company. Other things we did for our employees is we paid all of our people who caught COVID up until just recently and did not require them to take any type of leaves or go without their normal paycheck, and it didn't count against them, which some companies did that, some people didn't. But with that, we were able to maintain a good staffing here. And when you'll see our compliance reports, you'll see that we continue to meet and exceed compliance. And how do you meet and exceed compliance? You have to have 2 things. You have to have people who are certified in that truck who can go on the ambulance calls, and you need the truck itself. When we first had COVID here, we increased the amount of vehicles we had here, and we also brought in 2 vehicles for the fire department, which we worked out a small lease agreement with the city as backup, knowing that we were potentially going to have a lot of transports, which with COVID, there were some transports, but most transports actually went down. So we actually seen a decrease in transports versus increase. Now, granted, as you guys know, it's kind of a wave. And so that wave is up and down, but during that time, and now obviously we're coming out of COVID. So with that, I'm going to have our Director of Operation, Mitchell Witt, will come up and go through our annual report, which looks very familiar to you. And then afterwards, if we have any questions, we'll go from there. Mitchell?
Good evening. Thank you for your time. We will just get started. Part of the contract is that we are required to be CAS accredited. It is a renew year for us. We actually got word after this was posted today. The current state of that is we turned in our paper application. They sent back an hour before I came here that our paper application was good to go and they'd be setting up time for our site visit. CAS is the gold standard in EMS for accreditation. Mark touched some on COVID. Through the contract year, we had right under 2,500 known COVID or suspected COVID patients. The previous year was about 35, so still seeing a significant amount of COVID. The numbers we are still monitoring weekly, sending out to our partner agencies, tracking trends. Clinical key performance indicators, these are the calls where the time on scene directly affects the patient outcome. So our trauma was 11.5 minutes. Stroke is 13. We shoot for under 20 minutes on that, so you can see there's a significant in Sioux Falls. We have great scene times. STEMI is right above 15 minutes. Back to the STEMI. With that, the American Heart Association has Mission Lifeline. You have to meet standards. We hit the highest award, which is the Gold Plus Award, meaning so many of our patients received aspirin. We transmitted the 12 lead in a certain amount of time. Cardiac arrest survival rate continues to be high in Sioux Falls. We're very lucky. Sioux Falls for non-traumatic cardiac arrest survival was 15% compared to a nationwide of 9%. That CARES registry includes 500 different communities across the United States. There's a significant amount. We're significantly higher in that survivability. Patient satisfaction, we use a third-party company that we send out surveys to people who would remember their care, and we're in the state to remember their care. Year over year, you can see, that's the graph on the right, overall satisfaction continues to go up from last year. The blue boxes in there are patients who strongly agreed. They hit the top box on their survey for all items. Call for service trends, you can see each year we've been in Sioux Falls, it's continued to go up. On average, calls for service are going up about 10%. You can see we started the beginning of this year in January. It was 16.5% higher than the previous year. This is just the different priorities we have and the amount of those priorities that we go on for each. You can see the largest is priority 2 and priority 3. Priority 2 is going to be lights and sirens. It's your non-life-threatening emergencies. We're going lights and sirens, and priority 3 is non-emergency, no lights and sirens. Calls for service, obviously the numbers have gone up. Along with that, the transport trend, we're transporting more patients as well. And here we're showing our compliance trends. With this, we monitor and track deployment, make sure we're putting trucks out at the road at the right time to continue to meet compliance. Here is compliance by priority. You can see we're meeting and exceeding the 90% in all categories for the entire year. Here shows 96.05% of our calls have been on time. We had 3.36 that were late, and then out of our late calls, just over 0.5% is it for outliers. Employee engagement, I included the last 3 years. You can see each year we've continued to go up in employee engagement. We've done a lot of things. You'll see in system improvement, improved response gear. Over the last year and a half, we've done about a 16% wage increase across the board for all field staff. System improvements, our mobile CAD we upgraded this year to Zerker Field Ops, which has improved tracking. Our ambulances are tracked GPS dispatch based off location. This improved, it goes off cell data. We added video laryngoscopes. We had a very high first-time success rate for intubation. Since we've added the video, we've seen that number increase, become even higher. We continue to use First Watch and First Pass. It's chart review, system trends. Every single chart is reviewed. If it does not meet one of the standards, it puts it in a bucket for a human to review. Then we can follow up with the employee, pass it on to the medical director for follow-up, etc. And then the last exciting thing is Earn to Learn. This year we added a new program. We're hiring people off the streets as employees. We're paying for them to go through paramedic school, or EMT school. So they start day one as an employee, about 6 to 8 weeks. They will take their national registry and become an EMT. We are 2 weeks out from our first class of 5 graduating, so that's an exciting thing. And that wraps up. I'm open for questions.
Thank you. Councilors, questions? Councilor Neitzer?
Well, first of all, as somebody who has done it a few times, I would encourage anybody on the council, particularly new members, to do a ride-along. That's very eye-opening, an interesting thing to do. I just want to say, having watched this for many years, thank you for, as I read this report last night and then I was looking at it again, the reinvestment that you've made, both in like the increases for your employees and the things that you've done for your employees, and then replacing your fleet of trucks and all of the other things. So lots of good stuff there and great accomplishments. Maybe a couple of questions just as I was reading this over, and I think a few of them you covered. The first pass system you covered, so I'll skip that. There was also about the mobile dispatch terminals. So before, like at Metro 911, they could see where the ambulances were. Does this have anything to do with what they see, or is this more for what you see? What's the mobile dispatch telling?
It's part of the same program. We used an actual PC version of the dispatch. This is an app-based that goes off cell, so we don't have to, it's tracking all the time. Cell doesn't drop, so they can see us at all times. We see use pulse, so all of that's the same, just the reliability is significantly improved.
Okay, so just more reliable and accurate.
Newer technology.
Okay, very good. And then, sorry, I'm just looking at my other notes. And then it says you have an independent audit of select Medicare claims. Can I assume federal government require you to do some sort of an audit since you are being reimbursed by Medicare? That's something that I've
So we have to provide you with an annual audit of the Medicare audit to you. So we submit that to the city of Sioux Falls.
Okay. Yeah, I just saw it in the report.
Independent,
So.
yes.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Good job.
Yeah.
Other questions? Go ahead.
Very excited to hear about the fact that you're bringing people in to the profession and giving them training, and that's terrific. For anybody who might be watching at home, or so that I can help you spread the word, how are you publicizing that opportunity to people who might want to enter your field?
We've done a significant amount of Facebook ads, and that's been the number one way we've got. I think almost all of our employees for the Earn to Learn is online, posting at the different job sites. And then we have an employee who is going out to all the high schools and speaking to high school seniors.
Great idea.
Going to the college career fairs, career days. She's taken that on, and it's been very successful. With the REMSA grant money last year, the other thing to add that's pretty cool is we have a significant amount of scholarships for our current employees or any member of the REMSA system who's an EMT or Metro. They can apply to become an EMT to go to paramedic school completely free. So we should send 8 to 10 people through paramedic school for free, which is pretty significant.
Excellent. Thank you.
Other questions? Councilor Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I was a registered EMT in college, and so I had the opportunity to do ride-alongs in the Fargo-Moorhead area. And do you have different stations for paramedics to be able to stay and kind of relax? There was a bathroom. They had various stations throughout the city. It's my understanding that they stay in the ambulance. And do you find that improves response time or any comparison between the two?
I've worked actually in both. I started at patient care EMS right after startup. So I've been here since 2015. I can tell from sitting in a truck for a long time that it definitely improves response time. You're watching it come in, and a lot of times before Metro, because of our mobile dispatch, we see when the call's coming in. So by the time they dispatch the call out, our wheels are already moving. Moving throughout town as the trucks get dispatched, we're going to be in a better spot to respond to that call.
And do both firefighters and law enforcement, police officers respond to the cardiac arrest calls then?
Cardiac arrest,
Okay.
yes.
Is there any difference between the various
So the
groups
priority
responding?
1 calls up there, priority 1 is going to be the life-threatening emergencies, and if it's a priority 1 life-threatening emergency, police, fire, and the ambulance is all dispatched. Part of that is there's a significant number of officers throughout the area, and they're usually there within a minute or two. It's probably what helps with our cares and how our numbers are so high is the great partnership we have with PD and fire.
Other questions? Go ahead, sir.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate the great compliance, not to go negative, just want a flavor. What's the most common criticism that you receive in your surveys with your patients besides response time? What would you say is a common criticism you receive?
I think the most common one we see is the comfort of a ride. And if you've done a ride along, you know you're riding a big heavy truck bouncing down the road, and usually you're in pain, not feeling well, so everything's magnified. So that's usually the other thing that people say.
Okay, last call for questions. Councilor Neitzer?
Last one. So you have different posts, you call them, around town. So how often do you review those and recalibrate given trends of calls, our road construction that we're doing, for example, that might, I mean, how does that look?
Last year we did a major post change, reviewed the calls. It's something we review every single late call every day. It's a joint call with Metro, Fire and PD log in, are available to log in. And we review why that call is late. So when we have a significant amount of construction ones. However, with the amount of construction we've had in Sioux Falls, we have quite a few posts that we're just changing all the time to make sure we can get to different areas of town faster. So the west side's a good example with Marion Close that we move a post over for a few weeks, wait till the construction's done, reevaluate, move it again.
When I'm driving down the road, I'm always kind of just spying gas stations and trying to figure out where they've moved them to, because sometimes they move them on me, so it's just kind of a fun.
Seeing no further questions, I understand the contract calls for us to give you the 8.6, but I will say that's a pretty big bite. Certainly in a time of inflation, I understand how it bites you too, employees and costs and stuff like that. So come tonight, we'll have another discussion on it. Thank you for your presentation.
Can I, just to make a comment on that, Counselor, just for the percentage, it was the CPI national was 8.6. So last year, because I know Mr. Neitzer was interested in this, is that we gave our employees a 6% raise last year, and this year we gave them a 10% raise. So we had a 16% raise in salaries, and I anticipate that'll go up again as we try to keep people here and keep those people in the seats. And also, obviously, we're highly dependent on fuel because we are in those vehicles all the time. And then, you know, just the cost of, unfortunately, medical supplies also have gone up pretty significantly. Totally agree on the 8.6%. That doesn't affect a Medicare or a Medicaid patient, which is really important for the patient to know, because that's a fixed rate by those two, the state and the federal government. It does affect someone with their insurances, that's the increase would cost their insurance. And then we also have a charity program that we work very closely with people who cannot afford those rates. So just wanted to specifically address that, completely understand of that.
Thank you.
Councilor Selberg?
And maybe you addressed this, but as far as employees go and retention and turnover, how has that been?
Well, the retention here has been very good comparing to nationally. I don't have the exact rate. I'm sure it's in about the 20% range, but in healthcare overall has been very high, and specifically in EMS, it's been very high.
20%, what's?
Well, higher mostly in EMS. In EMS, it's been over 30 to 40% in most EMS systems across the country. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
The other piece I wanted to mention is that we moved to a new building during COVID out on Russell Street. It's a beautiful building. We were going to have open houses and they kind of fell through. But we also have the School of EMS there. We own the School of EMS. Avera used to have the School of EMS. We came to an agreement with them and purchased less expensive than an ambulance. Most people are going to doctor's office appointments. We started that, we're putting our foot in the water in that. We've had it going for about 10 months now. And it's another alternative, once again, to, how do you get costs where you got to have those at. So those three things we've improved upon over the last year, along with the fleet. Someone mentioned we have a brand new fleet here in Sioux Falls also. That's all. I'll stop now.
Only because it was asked, it says on page 11, although the full-time attrition rate was above what is desired in 2021, in the first quarter of 2022, the attrition rate was 11%. So.
Thank you.